Cool. All right. And then how do I share my screen again? Oh, bottom. Can you guys see my screen?
Mm-hmm. Yes, very
Yep.
organized.
Yeah, I could see it.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to move this over so that we can see the screen. Great. And where's that present button? And there we go. Awesome. All right. Welcome, everybody. It is October 28th. We are getting further through the first semester. So we will start on the meeting today. So quickly, just to go over what we're going to do tonight, we have Shannon and Francesca, our guest speakers. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. They're from the UConn PT grad program. And so they're here to answer any questions you guys might have about the application process or anything related to that. We have some election information for next meeting. So for those of you who are interested in taking on a leadership role, applying to kind of be an e-board member, we're going to talk more about that later. And then we're going to talk about some club updates.
So, hi everyone. So this is, I'm Francesca, and that's my roommate Shannon
I'm
with
Shannon.
me. So we just made some kind of just the main topics that we thought were important to talk about for the application process. So starting with the GPA and major. So I know a lot of schools, they say on average like 3.4 is what's generally competitive. I think that's probably about right. I don't have too much to say on that, but mine was a 3.6, just for anyone who was wondering, like credential wise for the schools that we got into. And then Shannon, if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, I know for sure, like I did have a 3.8, but I know like our roommate, for example, she had a 3.4, got into UConn. Yeah, I mean, like, again, it's all very like a holistic application process. So I feel like if your GPA is not like, doesn't have to be a 4.0 to get into PT school for sure. So you can rest assured that way. There's definitely a lot of other things that go into the process. So, yeah, I mean, grades are definitely important, but it's not everything. And then, sorry, Fran, do you want to go say something?
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I was an allied health sciences major at UConn. So, just like your generic major, but you can really be any major. Fran can speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, so I was an engineering major at UConn, and then decided I wanted to do PT, so took my prereq. So basically, just putting that out there, different majors like definitely help, don't necessarily hurt you.
Yeah, and then in general too, I was just say about majors, again, you can really be whatever major you want to be. It doesn't really matter. I would just recommend looking at like the prereqs for the PT schools you think you want to apply to, just because they all could be a little bit different. And if you are, I'm sure like as an engineering major, you wouldn't be just automatically required to take a lot of the PT prereqs anyway. So just making sure you're kind of keeping on track with that as you kind of go throughout your course and plan your plan of study and stuff like that.
Yep. Okay.
Awesome.
So next we talk with Jerry. Did you have any questions?
I was just going to say, if anybody has any questions in the chat, I can't really see them. So you guys can, I guess, answer them. Or if anybody else is like typing away, go for it. So.
Yeah, feel free to stop us anytime for questions or anything. Okay, so GRE-wise, also I don't know where everyone's at like in their application process right now. I'm sure there's a lot of seniors probably here, so I'm sure some of you have already taken the GRE maybe. But for those who maybe haven't, I recommend taking it early if you can. I know everything's different right now with COVID. I don't really know what's going on with that. Or I guess some schools might not be requiring it, but for those who do, like, you can take, there's like a month in between when like you can take it once and then take it a second time. So I took it once and then I took it a second time just to see if I could do better, if you have the means to take it a second time. And like I ended up doing better on all of my scores the second time, and I didn't study at all in between. So that is something, you know, that could be helpful if you're looking, like just based on test to test, like you could end up doing better. And so score-wise, I got, just for those who are wondering again, I got 156 on verbal, 158 quantitative, and a 4.5 for the writing. Yeah, and all I really did just for study-wise, like I recommend doing something, but I just got one of the GRE books and took notes from there with practice.
Yeah, I'll second Fran on that one. I honestly, I think I took the GRE in June, and then I applied in the fall. So that was kind of like my timeline. Really, I probably only studied for a month. So I think I started studying in May, beginning of May. There is like some like nice apps for like the vocab, like GRE apps, and like Fran got one of the testing books. And I would just recommend doing a practice test once or twice, because the actual test, my biggest struggle was the timing for specifically the math question section, just because I'm like, awesome, that's not really my strongest suit anyway. And I like just ran out of time when I was taking it. But yeah, that was my biggest like kind of recommendation. Definitely try it a couple of times just so you know how to like pace yourself. I only took it once. My scores, I got a 161 for the verbal, a 155 for the quantitative, and then I got a 5 for the writing. And I really too, it's more about the percentile, I think they say actually. So depending on where you fall, some schools are like, oh, as long as you're in like, I honestly don't even know, I'm gonna say at the 70th percentile or something. Well, I was only 55th for the quantitative too, so there's hope. But also I feel like some schools also appreciate your total score. So I was, maybe not as strong in the math section, but I was stronger in the reading section. So when combined, your score was, decent. I think UConn likes a 310 for their GRE. I know schools are different, but specifically for UConn. That's all.
And how does the timing match up for the GRE again? Just for those out there who are not sure.
Yeah, so you actually get your scores back immediately. So you take the test and it literally pops up at the screen at the end. I think the writing takes like 2 weeks to get back.
Okay.
Yeah, and like Fran said, you have to wait a month before you take it again.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I think they ask you to send them maybe like 4 weeks before you apply, just so they have time to arrive at the school.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I think most schools say like around 300 is what they look for.
I agree.
And UConn does say 310, which is a little bit high, but I do know like a lot of people in our program like definitely didn't get a 310 either. Like, so it's not like a hardcore number. But yeah, I don't know if there's any questions about that right now.
Where did you have to like take the GRE? Was it just like a random school, just like SAT kind of style?
Yeah,
you like when you go online, you go to ETS, that's like the site, and then you can sign up for locations based on the date. And I do, if for those who haven't taken it, like it fills up like quick-ish. Like they definitely tell you to sign up early, like 2 months ahead of time maybe, or something like that. So like where you can go is kind of based on what's available and stuff too.
Yeah, they usually do have them almost really every day of the week though. So in that sense, you do have flexibility. The testing center itself, I didn't notice at all actually. So for those who are curious, it's like very like high security. Like when you walk in, and I was like, I feel like it just could be intimidating for someone who's already nervous. So it is a little high security and like, whoa, what's going on here? But it's okay. But just as a heads up. So I guess going into like observation hours, let's see, I think I just had a lot because I also worked as a PT aide. So I ended up having honestly close to 500, but most of it was just from my job. Schools all have different, minimums, maximums. I would recommend though trying to probably being like closer to 100 would really be the best, just to make you competitive. You never want to be like the minimum of something, you always want to be a little bit better. So which can it can sound scary, but the hours do add up really fast. Especially if you just try to I know also right now things are so different. I'm sure it's impossible to get into anywhere with COVID, but I just basically would call any hospitals, clinics around. They're very flexible. I shadowed at UConn Health Center. I shadowed at Connecticut Children's, Bristol Hospital. I called my elementary school in my hometown, and I shadowed a PT, the school PT there. So, just trying to get those different settings too is really nice. And then also trying to build a relationship with a PT. So maybe I would recommend shadowing at the same place, a couple times. If you can set up coming in once a week for maybe a period of I don't know, 3 months or something. More too, just to be able to have someone to ask for that recommendation letter from the PT, so they really do know you. And then finally, my one note was when you're there, just be friendly, smile. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys have shadowed, but the little things definitely make a difference. I work as a PT tech, and I see students shadowing, and you can definitely tell the ones who are engaged and the ones who aren't. They'll be on their phones, or they'll just kind of be standing there. And then you have people who will help me fold the laundry and wipe down the tables, and people do appreciate that stuff. So just putting your best face forward, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much what Shannon said. And then for my hours, I had 120 about at a PT place that I worked at, and then paid, and then I did 20 hours at an outpatient, and then 20 hours at Bridgeport Hospital. So for mine, my job even, it was February or something before one of the summers I wanted to work, and I really wanted to get a PTA position, and I don't know it's really hard to find those, so I kind of just called a bunch of PT places and walked into a couple, and I just ended up walking into this place and asking if they needed any help for the summer, and they happened to, so that's how I got my PTA job, and that's how I got all these hours. So definitely recommend just reaching out to places. It can't hurt. And definitely that's how you can find a lot of opportunities. And the other two, I just called and asked if I could shadow at the other two. And yeah, I know it's different with COVID, but usually some places will be some places actually might not have had that before, but you can just explain. I think one of the places I shadowed at, they've never had anyone shadow there before, but I just explained, oh yeah, for PT school we need hours in the clinic, but that won't be most places. And so I had kind of on the lower end of hours, but I think it's, if you want to get another setting, say, because I wanted to get just another in a hospital or something for more variety, because that's something they like to see. I feel 20 hours is kind of the very minimum to do. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then moving into UConn's programs. So you can talk about that.
Yeah, of course. So UConn has, I would say they are a little underrated in the sense that they're not on the PT cast. So they're not necessarily a program that you kind of look up when you're looking at that big long list on the website. Mm-hmm. But they are a really good program, and they have, I don't know this exact statistic, but they're really one of the first programs in the country that's been established, which in general, looking at a program, it's just really important to look at kind of the integrity and the longevity of it, because some of the newer programs don't have as strong of clinical affiliations and connections. And that's what's really important, because those clinicals are what is essentially might be your first job. So some schools might only have them, say in the state you're working at, or just with a couple, clinics or hospitals. So that would even just be a question to ask, if you go to visit any schools or on interviews, asking about what type of clinical affiliations they have is really important. I mean, both of us can vouch for the faculty. Professors are super nice, and they're really there to help you learn. I would say UConn's a program that they accept you because they want you to graduate. Not every program is like that, which no one knows. Some programs will over enroll, and knowing that they kind of want to weed people out. UConn's not one of those programs, which is reassuring. But yeah, Fran, you can add whatever you'd like to add.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, UConn's program, they're not on PTCast, and they really don't put a lot of information on their website. Like I remember when I was applying, I was definitely very annoyed because I knew all this stuff about all these other programs. Like there are some programs that have like all the information listed on their website, like they have all their open house days, and like you can find out so much. And like, yeah, UConn's sadly is not like that right now. But I will say it's a very, very good program. Like, even though it doesn't say so much on their site, like it definitely like is one of the better programs out there. Like Shannon said, it's an old program, so you're gonna have a lot of um like there are a lot of options for clinicals because they have a lot of connections. And just like, yeah, professor wise and like course wise, like you're definitely getting like everything that you need. And like Shannon said, they're there to like actually help you graduate, whereas like a lot of others programs, they have like strict grades you need to get to stay in the program, or like, yeah, maybe they're trying to weed you out. Like UConn, like even if you fail a class, like they're not going to kick you out. Like they want you to make it through to the end. Also the smaller class size, I really didn't think I would care about class size. Like I was like, oh, I don't care, I've always gone to big schools. Like I don't mind having 60 people in my class. But having like 30 people definitely does make a huge difference, because like I can get help from my professors like almost like every single day during lab. I'm trying to think what else I like thought about. Oh, but also UConn's program is one of the cheapest.
Especially if you're in
And
state.
that actually was, yeah, if you're in state, that definitely was like one of my biggest factors in like deciding. Because in the end, like every program really is like the same. You're getting the same thing out of it. So if you can do it without going into like twice as much debt, that's always a good thing. But yeah, I don't know if anyone has any specific questions about UConn's program too, because I can't really remember a lot of the things I was wondering about it, but it definitely is way better than it seems from their site.
Their website, yes.
How does
So-
UConn compare to
go
like
for it,
other
sorry.
schools that you looked at? So that's what I was like looking at other states in the school. How would UConn like rank up to them?
Are you saying
Yeah,
like
so
Connecticut
Yeah.
or like
In Connecticut, that's what I was like looking at.
I applied. The only other school I applied to in Connecticut was UHeart, and I know UConn's like definitely better than UHeart. That was kind of my like, I'll just apply because it's a Connecticut school. I think you applied though to another one in Connecticut, right?
yeah,
Right.
so there's Sacred Heart, Quinnipiac, UConn, right? University of Hartford. Yeah, I know UConn's definitely better than University of Hartford. So Quinnipiac and Sacred Heart, Quinnipiac doesn't actually take people all the time because they do their 3+3, and they're one of those programs that kicks people out, like, and stuff like that. So it's not totally an option coming from another school. Sacred Heart, UConn, like, it's not really a ranking wise, because like both of them are very good programs. Basically, like there are a lot of different ways to like rank PT schools. So there's not really like an overall like way to say like, oh, which one is like the best program overall. Like both UConn and Sacred Heart are definitely very high up there basically program wise. Like I know Sacred Heart is very much more like open about it, and they're like, yeah, we're number, I forgot, but but UConn is also, I feel, just as good, like course wise, program wise, like facility wise. It's kind of, you have to look at like the little things that add up to it in the end. Yeah. And like to kind of tell. But I did apply Sacred Heart too. And I thought for me personally, UConn was like the better option.
Yeah, I know I was looking at Sacred Heart too, and just the cost alone too is pretty deterring. So
Yeah, it was, for me, I don't know if anyone, but for me, deciding between those two, the cost was probably the biggest factor.
definitely.
And just like the environment at UConn versus like Sacred Heart, I definitely liked it a lot better. It is very different. Like, so if you're speaking, like to kind of compare programs, like UConn's is smaller and more, you know, I feel like UConn's is smaller and more like relaxed, but you're still getting like the quality and like everything that you need versus Sacred Hearts, which is a little bit bigger and like I think their program's set up a little bit differently. They have like a problem solving component, but UConn also does some problem solving stuff just like within their courses. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you kind of look at all the components, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say too, and I can't speak on other schools, but UConn definitely has like friends that kind of like relaxed in like a good way. Like it's like a family environment, and you do even in like COVID, it's been hard because we've had a lot of our classes online, but we've just become super close with like the people even in our little like section that we're allowed to be with. Like so, you do kind of join like you become kind of like a family with your classmates. So I think it's kind of like a benefit of a smaller class size, especially like I went to UConn. I feel like almost all my classes were at least 100 people, you know, like, and that was fine with me. But like being in this setting, it is like kind of nice just to have like a tight knit group.
Awesome.
Does anyone else have any more questions?
Yeah, I had a quick question. So you guys were talking about the kind of like how other schools might like over enroll. So like in compared to UConn's, I'm assuming UConn doesn't over enroll, and because they don't do that, does that mean their acceptance rate is a little bit lower than most?
They kind of do like, so this kind of, I don't know if we talked about this yet, but I would recommend for sure applying as early as you can to schools because UConn and a lot of other schools kind of do like almost like a first come, first accepted if you're qualified. So I think Fran and I, you know, we didn't know this either until we started talking to our classmates, but we got accepted, I think, in December, but we both applied in early September. Our other roommate, I don't think got accepted until February. And then we have another friend who didn't get accepted until April. So it's kind of as people, and this is with a lot of schools too, as they accept people and people say no, then they give it out to other people, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So their acceptance rate, I guess, is, I think, they actually told us, do you remember in the email they initially sent out how many people applied? Like way back in the summer?
Yeah, I feel like, oh man, it was like between like 300 and 400 or something in total, I think.
Yeah, and our class,
I'm not really sure. Yeah.
So whatever that math is, I'm not sure. Again,
it's kind of like, yeah, but the whole acceptance process is really weird. Like specifically with UConn, every school is very different on how they do the acceptances. So like in general though, basically for every school, if you do apply earlier, they will look at yours first. They all have different like processes, like whether like they're gonna look at yours first, but then wait till they look at all of them. But there are some schools though that if they look at you first and you're more qualified or something than like the rest that are there with you, then you will get in, you know, first before they've even looked at like others. Yeah, for UConn, so Catrice is like our she's like the administrator. I don't know if anyone has spoken with her. Sometimes it's hard to reach her, but someone who's on like she handles all the acceptances and stuff. And I was speaking with her, I remember like before I was applying or when I was applying, and she said that how it works, so it says like November 15th on their site for like when the due date is, but that's like that isn't like, well, I don't know if that's the due date. Oh, that's when it says like they start like looking. I forgot what it says on the site, but Catrice basically told me that the middle of November is usually when they start looking at all of the applications for the first time. But she said they'll start from like whoever submitted it first. Like if it was like in August, they'll look at those first and then keep going. So like obviously definitely want to have it in by that November deadline. But like the sooner you do get it in, the sooner that you'll be looked at. And then how they accept is like they'll send out one round in January or in December. And then, well, so theoretically what they said they do is they send out one round of like acceptances in December, and it'll be like, it won't be the whole class. It'll be like 10 or something, or like 15. I'm not totally sure. And then they give everyone that they told in December like a month to respond. And then whatever spots they have left, they look at the next line and like then do a second round. 30 days later. But I know they did get backed up like even last year. They did one in December, and I don't think they did the second one till like February and then March. Yeah, so basically get it in early. And timeline wise, if you are wondering when you would find out, like it would just depend, but like they would start in December for UConn.
But at the same thing, if your friend gets in December and you don't lose hope, you know, could be April. They
Oh yeah,
give you a call.
yeah. So my friend, who is an undergrad, yeah, she found out like she didn't get in anywhere, and then found out from UConn like in April that she was gotten. So you never know. Yep. Okay. Any more questions about UConn's program for now?
Anything?
How's the chat looking?
Nothing in the chat right now.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to double check.
Okay, so we can talk about resume and personal statements really briefly if you guys want. So generally, like a resume for grad school it could be 2 pages. Like that's what they told me when I was doing mine. So mine was like a full 2 page. You kind of just want to put on, everything on there that you've done, just kind of get like anything you can. And then, definitely get it edited a bunch. And things they like to see generally like they want to see that you like or like to help people in some way, whether that's like volunteering like through clubs, or that you're like active in some way besides school. Like doesn't have to be anything crazy, but they do like to like see that there's something else that like you do, or like that you like to do to help your community or like others. Also something that was like helpful for like setting up my resume for grad school specifically is like they told me to put a related experiences section as like my first section. So instead of like just starting with like work and then volunteer, etc., I put related experiences, and I put anything that was related to PT from like work or volunteer like into that section, and then did my regular sections under that. So that's kind of like an easier way for them to like look at it, or easier way for you to organize it too.
I'm just gonna second basically everything Fran said. I also had like, I didn't set them on resume exact same way, of course. I had like an observation experiences kind of like section too, where I just basically like listed all that stuff. And it's a very repetitive process because your resume ends up being the same thing as like the PT cast and like everything, but just gotta go through the process.
Yep. So then, okay, personal statement and the essays. Definitely recommend drafting ahead of time. I don't know where everyone is at also again in the application process, like if you guys have already done this too, some of you, but
most of us are juniors, honestly, so we're like starting to think about it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I like a lot of schools, so you're not going to find out the exact essay prompts until the summer, like when the next round opens. I don't know what UConn posts theirs normally.
I feel like theirs is always the same.
It's the same, or it's just the same always.
I know I use
think it is.
personal statement for both, I think. I just changed it like slightly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I used 2 different ones actually. But because I forgot why I did. I think, because our PT cast prompt, I felt like it was more, actually I wrote it down, yeah. So ours for our year was reflect on a meaningful experience in your life and share how that experience influenced your personal growth, such as your attitudes or perceptions. So it was like you had to like pick an experience and talk about it. So that's why I did a different one for UConn, because it didn't fully like, I feel like, reflect everything that UConn wanted. But basically for those, just always always good to do as soon as possible. If you want to like prepare for it before like the questions actually come out, a lot of them talk about like experiences or like why PT, or just like examples of leadership, or like just like you can think of like certain things that you think might be important. Like if you want to start sort of planning, what can I write about? Things that you could pull from maybe. But I do know, so for UConn, the personal statement they said was pretty important. At least they told me that when I was applying. Yeah. But Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like not too bad, just gotta do it. And like I went to the writing center too, if like that helps anybody. They helped me kind of like come up with ideas and stuff to say. Um, but yeah, anyone have any questions about that?
How
was your
long are
course
they
again?
usually?
Yeah.
I think it was like, was it 1,500 words was like the cap for the PT cast,
Oh, okay.
something like that.
Yeah, that might have
UConn's
been for
is
PTCast. UConn's is short, so theirs is
UConn's is
500.
500, but it's not a hard 500 because I asked because I was a little over. They don't like count your words or anything for UConn, but the one on the official application, the PT cast, is like longer, or it can be longer, I guess. Yeah, I
Mhm.
too. I'm like not someone who loves writing, so I didn't start thinking until August, but I wrote mine then. I wouldn't really recommend that, especially if you're applying to other schools with supplemental essays. Definitely kind of planning ahead is a good idea for sure. But
Yeah, I had
okay.
yeah, I remember I had like one long doc with like all of my essays and everything in it, and I would just like, yeah, I just tried to do it all over time. I think like over a month, I just like filled it all in eventually. Um, yeah, for my personal statement for UConn though, also some things like I forgot what their question is, but it's something pretty general. I don't, I think it's like YPT or something. Yeah. But I talked about like in mine, I basically just like started with like an experience that like had like volunteering and then like talked about like what solidified me wanting to be a PT and then sort of a little bit about what I learned like from like observing or from like my PT work and then just what I love about PT. So yeah, it's kind of general, but that's all I guess if that's helpful for anybody.
I would recommend too, during your like observation hours, like, and I didn't really do this, and we were just talking about this the other day, because again, these applications like never end. There's always other things you have to write, even in PT school for like clinicals and for scholarships, and kind of having some notes about your observation, like what you saw that day, like some like diagnoses you saw, patients, like what you did. It can just be really helpful because you honestly you will forget, and then to look back and like kind of be like, oh, I can talk about that in my personal statement. That was like really cool, something I saw that really inspired me, things like that. You know, just having them kind of jotted down somewhere. I don't know, make an Excel spreadsheet if you want to or something, can be really helpful too, just to kind of draw like inspiration from.
Yes, I was gonna say that. That's right. Um, yeah, for like interviews and stuff, even for all these essays and for like interviews, that's like super helpful because you can be like, oh, when I was shadowing here and I saw this patient do this, like I never knew that before, and that really inspired me to like motivated me to be a PT. So it's just like good stuff to like pull from for all those things. Yeah. Was there another question?
Maybe not.
Oh, and oh, one more thing is for like the essays and for interviews. I forgot where I saw this, or maybe you guys know this too, but what's like really good is to like look up the values of like the school or like what they say on their site, what they look for, and then like try to put that into all of those. I pretty much did that for all of them. um, yeah, it's definitely really helpful because it kind of gives you some structure and like then they like to see that they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
doing your research, because even if you just sprinkle in a little bit of like, you know, I see you do this research at this school, I'm interested in this, you know, we're like, yeah, your values, and like say them explicitly in the supplemental essays and to in the interviews. It just kind of shows that like, wow, this person like actually cares and took the time to, you know, really like research, you know, us and our school, and they care. So it definitely like kind of shows your commitment.
I'm curious, where do the interviews fit in with the time frame of the application process?
Um, so most of them happen throughout the fall and into, I guess, probably into the winter. But for me, so I like, I had it when I like did all my applications, I had like the goal of like submitting all of them by September 1st. So I submitted all of them by September 1st. So then I had all my interviews like through like October, and I think just like October and November, honestly. Yeah. Because mine was in so early, so I was kind of in the first round of interviews for all my schools. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually only one of my schools, well, I guess one was a virtual interview I had, and I think that was in December. But my only in-person interview was in early November. And then I also submitted, I don't think I submitted September 1st, but within the first week of September, I think I did. But there is multiple rounds. Like there's usually like that early fall and then like a December. And I think there's even a January too for certain schools, depending on when you submit.
Yeah, I had like, well, so I applied to 10 schools. um, and I think I had 6 interviews or something like that. I had a lot. Um, yeah, they were all in person and just throughout those 2 months. Oh yeah, we can talk about those. I think we'll come back to that actually for next. Yeah. So, yeah, let's just talk about interviews. Okay, so, um, my biggest tips for interviews would be like make sure you practice beforehand. Even after I like did like 5 interviews, I was like when I like did it the night before, it was definitely really helpful just to like refresh and like remember like, oh, just like it's kind of like a muscle, I guess, almost, like you have to get used to like the environment and like just answering on the spot or like remembering what to say. But my biggest tip too is what I did is like, so I had a doc with like all the questions I could come up with, like looking online, common interview questions. Also, I can share it with you guys if you want. There's like a lot of questions on there, and I put like questions from like my interviews, like for some of the schools on there too. So there's some that like you might actually be asked. But for all those questions, I would answer them and put like within the answer, I'd highlight like 2 or 3 things, like 2 or 3 words even that I like wanted to remember. And that was like helpful for when I got to the interview because when they asked a similar question or just any question, I would remember like 2 or 3 things. And it would kind of like structure like my response. So I wasn't like as nervous because I knew what I was going to say next, even if I wasn't going to say it the exact same way every time. So,
Yeah, I did a similar thing. I kind of made like a document. You can find a lot of stuff online too. Honestly, you could even Google, say you were, I don't know, let's say I don't know what schools have interviews these days, but like, I don't know, Northeastern, say, like Northeastern interview questions. Like people like talk in these forums. They literally have questions. Like you can find crazy things on the internet. So like, just do your research about the questions, prepare a little bit. I would say too, like try not to be too scripted though. Like it's definitely good to write out your responses if you want to, but again, you never really know what they're gonna ask. So you don't want to, just have this like pre-recorded response in your mind because you also want to sound natural too. So kind of avoiding being scripted. And also too, like it can be scary. Interviews are scary, but try to, again, I always say just have a smile, be friendly. Like that goes a long way. And don't be afraid to like if they ask you a question and you're like, oh my gosh, what? Just take a second and like think and just be like, oh, can you just give me a moment? Just to, think about that for a second. Like that was a really good question. Kind of take a second to think about it. Like that's fine to say that because they'll appreciate that you're being, thinking about it versus just kind of like blabbering whatever comes right off your tongue. So
yeah. And I think one, there was definitely an interview where they asked me a question and I like said whatever, they like had no idea. So I like said something on the spot and it still like wasn't I kind of like got it wrong, I guess, because like I said something and it still like was not what they wanted. Um, but I like the rest of the questions went perfectly fine and like I ended up getting into the school still. So it's not like the end of the world if like you're there and like you really mess up one question, like, you still got all the rest, they still have your whole application. So don't stress too much, just like do a little preparation and like have your main things that you could pull from and then you'll be all good. Yeah, does anyone have any more questions about interviews?
So did you guys do like an interview for every school you would apply to, would you say, or like the ones that made it available?
I personally, I did not. I applied to 5 schools, and yeah, I only had 2 interviews, only one in person. One was just like, this was even before COVID. It was just like a WebEx meeting. So definitely not every, I mean, UConn doesn't do interviews. So I think it really depends. Fran had a lot though, so I don't know.
Yeah, I like trying to remember. Well, yeah, I went to like 6 of them. And like I guess because I wasn't sure where I wanted to go yet, so I still wanted, if they were still in my running, like I was like I'm gonna go. I did not go to one because um they because I already knew I got into a school that was like better, that I like wanted to go to over that one. Yeah. But generally, yeah, if I still wanted to keep them in the running, I went. So okay,
What do we have next? Oh, picking schools.
um
Okay.
so yeah, so if you get into a few, also okay, so I got into more schools than I like thought. Like it seems like really scary. And everyone, I mean, there are definitely people who like won't get in, and like, also don't feel bad if you don't get in places. But in general, like it wasn't like as scary as like maybe people make it out to be all the time. Obviously, yeah. So if you do get into a couple schools, like it was like something that was hard for me was like narrowing down what schools I wanted to go to, because I didn't even think I was going to get into like one. So I kind of made like a list of like criteria that I wanted to consider, like when going to, oh, actually I made a list of criteria to consider when like deciding what schools to apply to. So I can say like that first. So like when deciding what schools to apply to, one, I made sure obviously that like I met the requirements for like prereqs. So for some of them, I actually like called, like if there was just like one class where it was, where I didn't have that specific class, but I had something similar, I just called them and said, oh, like, would this count or not? And like one school actually like was like, oh, we can like waive that one for you. So like if there's a school you really want to go to, but there's like one single class that like maybe you didn't have, like definitely give them a call and see if they could work with you. Um, then 2, obviously make sure they're accredited. 3, distance was a big factor for me because I didn't want to go too far, but might not be for everyone else. But so that if there was a school that was more than like 4 hours away, I didn't apply. So that was kind of just another narrowing down factor. And then you can look at their pass rate for the licensure exam, especially the first time pass rate, I guess, is most important. So like, that'll tell you about the program a little bit, like make sure it's a good program. And then cost, that was one of my most important factors too, because as I said before, like they really are all the same in the end. You are getting the same degree, even though some programs might seem like a lot better than others, like you're still gonna be able to do the same things with them. And then clinical options, so like how old the school is. This one was like very important actually for like deciding between, because I didn't actually realize some schools like there was a school I applied to in Pennsylvania, and they said though that for their clinicals you could only go to clinicals like within that state, which is like fine, but a lot of people get their first jobs through clinicals, and so I kind of wanted to go somewhere where like there would be more options. Like so you can do clinicals anywhere in the country, so I'm not like limited to just being like in that state. And then the facility or equipment they have, if you go check it out or online, because that's not super important, but it is nice to have a really nice facility, or just make sure you have everything that you need. And then, oh, even facility wise, like one of my schools I applied to, the lab wasn't even at the school, it was at like a neighboring school, so you'd have to like go. So, just making sure everything. And then length of the program. So usually it should be 3 years, but there have been a couple that were different. So it's definitely something to consider. Like Arcadia is actually, they're doing like a fast paced, like 2.5, I think, year program or 2-year program, which is kind of crazy. And then Northeastern is longer. It's like 3.5, 4 years almost. And then lastly, like how new the school is. So older schools like generally have more places for clinicals, have a more like established program, you know, better professors, things like that. So that's kind of what I used when like picking out the schools, and I guess pretty much deciding between the schools in the end. Um, Deciding between them in the end, my main factors were just cost, distance, and clinical options. Yeah. So, but in the end, no matter where you go, like any program will be a good program because they all do give you the same thing. So,
Yeah, I'm gonna basically, Fran explained it really well. I think for me too, I would say it's hard, especially like if you go to an interview at this school, it's like a beautiful school with a great name. Sometimes you're very like allured by it. But at the end of the day, you're spending like a lot of money on school, and you probably already spent a lot of money on undergrad. So like it sucks that it has to be such a money thing, but that was really what it came down, I think, to me in the end, because like, Francesca also said, at the end of the day, you're going to be graduating with the DPT as long as you pass the exam. So, you're all going to end up in the same place at the end. So it doesn't matter if you're going to like, some crazy great school or, some school that maybe doesn't have the best reputation, because like you're the one that's going to make the most of it. So just kind of got to do what's best for you in your situation.
yep.
Awesome. And then last, do we have any questions so far? Anything in the chat?
I just have like a kind of a random one. There's nothing in the chat right now.
Okay.
But did you guys find that there's like a class that was pretty common that you had to take for like a school that wasn't usually in like the UConn like plan of study?
Think I know like usually schools want like at least one or two psychs, which depending what your major is. I was allied health, so we had to take a bunch of psych anyway, so that was fine, but that was sometimes a wild card. Some want like an upper level bio. I would also recommend, I don't know, a lot of schools want 8 credits of bio, so if you only took like 1107, unfortunately you might have to do 1108, which kind of sucks, but that's something I didn't really know at first. I'm trying to think. I don't know. One of my schools wanted like you to be CPR certified, so I don't know. That's something to look into too, I guess.
I think like generally most schools had like the basics, nothing crazy. Like exercise phys is like one that a lot have, but like obviously that's something that's very typical to take at UConn. Yeah, and then like the extra, like where it varies would just be like the psych classes sometimes a little specific, but as long as you have like 2 upper level, that was generally okay. Yeah, you'll find like a random school here or there with like some really specific class, but yeah, like I guess like if you, I think like I don't remember if I did this, but when I did this, but like I know I went through all the schools just that I thought would be like the main schools I wanted to apply to, like kind of early, just to see if they had like a specific class that I didn't know about, that I needed to take or something. But yeah, generally I was okay with just like the very basic classes. So
Any other questions? I don't know if there is. I'm just looking at the slide. I don't know if there's any other things that you want us to touch on. Or
I guess like real quick for application timeline. So PTCAS opens early July. And then school deadlines range like throughout the fall. And like, for submitting your applications, always do it at least 4 weeks before the deadline, because the time for processing, and like as we said before too, earlier is always better. And the only other thing to pay attention to, like deadline wise or time wise, is just like signing up for the GRE, like making sure you do it like ahead of time and like kind of planning, oh, that these are the 2 months I want to take them in. And things you could do before PTCAS opens is like finalize your resume, sign up for the GRE, maybe begin studying, depends on, what you want. Finalize your letters of rec, come up with general ideas for writing, and like finishing any observation hours, And if you can, like deciding on what schools to apply to, because doing that early is definitely helpful also. So
Yeah, I think you got it all there.
Anybody else have any other questions real quick?
And if you guys have any other questions in the future, we can give whoever like our emails, and feel free to like reach out to us too. Like, I don't mind answering any questions at any time, because I know like there's very little guidance as like a pre-PT person. At least I feel like my advisor like didn't help me with anything. So definitely feel free to reach out if you guys have any other questions you think of later.
Awesome. Yeah, maybe we can, grab your emails or something and just provide that. That'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, I can even put it in the chat if I.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. And so with COVID right now, like how are classes? You guys are strictly just online? Are you like visiting, the PT school at all, or?
So we have all our lectures are online, and then we have one lecture and then like our lab in person. So we're in person Mondays and Wednesdays for like 5 hours, and then Wednesdays for like 3 hours, I think. Yep. But over the summer it was all online. So
it was really bad, actually.
It was really bad.
It was just very hard. As you guys could imagine, PT is not something that really can be taught online,
Yeah.
It's
that seems very difficult.
So they're really trying,
Yeah.
They're giving us like extra experiences and like workshops and stuff to kind of make up for like a little bit of the lost like hands-on time. I mean, they like taught virtually the best they could, but we were both practicing on like, your brother and sister, and then doing our practicals through FaceTime. Like, it was just like kind of crazy. So
that seems pretty hectic. Oh man.
They're making it work.
Definitely won't be like that forever. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like I learned a lot for it being how it was. So
yeah, no, I still learned so much. It's like, it was crazy, but yeah, it's a time, but it's doing better. And just even the in-person experiences we have now are like super beneficial and good. So
Awesome. Well, any final thoughts, any final questions? Open floor to anybody. Okay. Nothing in the chat, Emily?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions for our guest speakers, so say a quick thank you to both Shanna and Francesca for joining us today. It was very nice
Thank
of you guys to
so
come
much
over.
for coming.
Yes, thank you so much.
yeah, of course.
All right. So all the members, we'll just continue with our regular meeting. Again, thank you so much, Francesca and Shannon, for showing up. Thank you, guys.
no problem.
Thanks, guys. Good luck at school.
Bye.
Everything,
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya. Thank you. All right. And so next for our meeting, well, any other questions?
Yeah.
All right, we're past that right now. So again, a quick thank you to those guys. So now we're just going to transition to elections. So as you may know, we are holding elections because the new e-board is going to be approaching in 2021. So we have, what is it, 5 or 6? We have 6 positions. So we just have the president, vice president, secretary, public relations, community outreach, and treasurer. So if any of you guys are interested in, getting something good on a resume, a leadership position, that's fantastic. We need to carry on the e-board after some of us e-board members are gone after we graduate. So please reach out if you guys are interested, and we'll be holding kind of like a quick speech, kind of like little presentations for, why each person thinks that they want to run. And yeah, it's based off of the calendar year, not academic year. So that's why we're kind of doing it like halfway through. And if you have any experience in any of these areas, like president is a leadership position, kind of oversight, as well as vice president. Secretary is very good at, kind of like giving a broad kind of, what is it? Maddie, can you help me out here?
Like meeting
kind of
notes.
like meeting notes. Exactly. Yeah. Meeting notes and everything. public relations, basically like reaching out to, the UConn community and making sure people are kind of in touch with what we're doing here, community outreach, just community opportunities like shadowing hours, having guest speakers come in and, doing fundraisers and things like that. And then treasure, if you're good with money, like Jackie is, then then definitely, apply for those positions. So if any of you guys are interested, please let us know and we can get that going for next meeting.
Yeah, I'll send out a survey probably tonight for application because we're gonna want to know ahead of time just like how many people are applying and what, and also just like I wanted to add like there's like no requirements for applying just so like everyone knows, like all of the current e-board, even if we are planning to stay on, we are reapplying, so there's no like position that's already taken. Like you can apply for whatever you want and it doesn't matter like your major, what grade you're in, like nothing matters, but like but yeah, anyone can apply really.
Yeah. And I kind of want to reiterate, if you guys have any questions about the position, if you're interested and you don't know what it entails, you guys can reach out to us individually too. I'm sure any of us will be happy to talk about what we do and what our contributions to the club are. So don't be afraid.
Ooh, wait, I need to go back. I was going to say, I might want to, you think it's valuable to like put our contact info in here, or you just reach out?
I can send an email out with it with like
all
of
it,
unless you guys wanted to put it in the chat now, but yeah.
Sure, yeah. Because if any of you guys want to like reach out individually, like Jackie said, that was great. Email us individually, message, in group me or anything. We would love to talk. So.
And then lastly are some club updates. Just a reminder, the shirts are in. I know most of you have already gotten them or plan somehow with me to get them, but if you haven't, just make sure to reach out to me. I know I think the PT email is kind of being wacky right now again, so I'll be sending my personal email anyway, so you can just reach me through that and I'll get back to you. Our Blaze fundraiser was originally supposed to be tomorrow. It was pushed to next Thursday from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. So once I get the flyers and information from Blaze, I'll be sending that out to you guys. So your main job for that is to advertise for us. Like I said, I'll be sending out flyers, and since with COVID going on and everything, they'll actually have a code for ordering online that you could just put in, and we'll still get 20% of the proceeds for whoever shows up with the flyer or the code. So that's a really great way. So plan to have a pizza party with all of your friends next Thursday. And the next meeting, which is 2 weeks from today, we will be having a couple physical therapist guest speakers, and we will be holding election speeches. So another big meeting in 2 weeks.
Exactly. So we got a lot going on between now and the end of the semester. Again, just to summarize, we're transitioning e-boards. We got a couple more guest speakers coming in, fundraisers, t-shirts. Definitely grab them if you haven't done so already. And that is pretty much it. Does anybody have any final comments, questions, any members for anything? Nothing? Okay. All right. Well, if that is it, we will see you guys. When is it?
In 2 weeks or at Blaze.
2 weeks. In 2 weeks or at Blaze. Yeah, we might run into everyone at Blaze. So be sure to show up for that. And on that note, we will see you guys next meeting. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. See you.
All right, Matt, do you want to end the recording?